Hello, good morning. Today I'm going to explain API Gateway. An API Gateway acts as a single entry point for all client requests. It routes requests to the appropriate backend service and handles cross-cutting concerns. Clients do not directly communicate with microservices. Instead, they interact with the API Gateway. Let's try to understand that. Suppose we have 10 microservices, and those microservices are hosted on, let's say, payment microservices hosted on server 1, invoice service has been hosted on server 2, and so on. So we have a client application, let's say React, that is made on React. Now that application, the client application is calling 4 microservices. So one thing that client application has to kept the URL of all 4 microservices somewhere in configurations. Apart from that, suppose a payment service is using JWT token authentication, and let's say invoice service is using API token key authentication. In that way, client application has to implement all the different type of the authentication and authorization mechanism that microservice is using, and there will be so switch cases, like if the client is calling payment service, the client need to pass JWT token for the payment service, a different kind of the separate URL. Similarly, like if the client application are calling invoice services, they need to call the API token and then URL for that. So that was the problem statement what I just explained. Now that why do we need an API gateway? To have centralized authentication and authorization approach, simplified client interaction, like single point, like the client application will always calling API gateway. And then it will be the responsibility of the API gateway to pass request to that account service, inventory service, or payment service based on the rule and URL that been implemented on API gateway. Improved security and monitoring, better scalability and performance control. So let's see how the core responsibility. So request routing. So the client, as I told you in that earlier as well, the client application will be always calling API gateway. So based on the request URL, the API gateway will route the request to that corresponding microservices. Let's example account service, inventory service, or payment service. Authentication and authorization using JWT, it could be OAuth authentication, it could be API authentication. So that will be done on API gateway, and that will be common for all the microservices like account service, inventory service, payment service. There is the common authorization, authentication, logging, and everything. Now, in that way, the account service doesn't need to implement a separate authorization or authentication. Similarly, the inventory service, the payment service, because that is already been done by payment API gateway. Rate limit and throttling. Like if we need to limit that request, like let's say, and request is coming like 10,000 requests in a minute from a same IP address, then we can reject the request. That can be easily implemented in API gateway. Load balancing, logging, monitoring, and caching, that can be done on API gateway. So that popular API gateway tool, cloud-based like AWS API Gateway, Azure API Management, Google Cloud API Gateway. The open source or self-hosted Kong, NGINX, and the YARP. So today I'm going to show the implementation of the YARP gateway. Okay, so I'm on that empty solution. let me add a new project here, new project, and let's say I'm going to add API Gateway, and next I can name it like payment service. Next, and it will be like .NET or HTTP, and I can create. Okay, let me delete that what come with the built-in, delete that weather. In the same way I delete the forecast controller. Okay, now let me add a new controller. It should be the payment API controller. Let me add it. Let me name it payment service. Okay, it will be the route, and let me name it. It will be API and name of the controller. Let me rename it payment service. Payment service. And let me add a method. This is a post and public asynchronous task IXM result, and let's make payment, and let me create a class first, public class payment detail. That will be output required, and let's say public string full name get set and another is required public string email, that will be get and that string dot empty, and another is required public string phone number, that will be get set empty, and let's say required public decimal payment amount, let's say that set. So I'm not going to implement that. That is for just that to show you how we can do that. Okay, now if let me say that model state dot is valid, it's valid, let's say not, then I can return bad request, and let's say model state. Otherwise return okay payment added successful. Okay, so I'm just like, okay, in the similar way, let me add in the PDF I mentioned 3 service: account service, inventory service, and payment service. So let me create another project, add a new project that will be .NET Core API, of course. And let's say, what was the other? Account service. And that will be like that. In the same way, in the account service, let me delete that default modal and default service feather. Okay, now let me add a controller. It should be API controller. Let me add that and let me call it account. I can name it account service, and let me add get public asynchronous task IXM result, and okay, I'm just returning a list of account. So let's public class user account. Let's say public string, let me DTO, full name, get set empty, public email, and public string phone number, get set string dot empty, and let me say public and user ID, which is get set. Okay, now here I'm going to return a list of account. So, account user account DTO, and let's say users is equal to new list of account. That users dot add new user account DTO, full name, let's say Satya, email, let's say satya@xyz.com, and phone number, let's say, and ID, user IDs, let's have 1. In the same way, I can add one more user, Satya 2, and user ID 2. And let me return, okay, users. Okay, so I'm done with that account API, and now let me go to that. Let me make one more project. Let's say .NET Core API inventory service. The same way, I can delete this, and the same way I can delete this for the cost. Let me add a new controller. It should be the API controller. Or let me test with that 2 services only. Let's forget, otherwise it will be too long. Let me remove it. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now I can go to that the properties of the project and I can debug project dependent configurations and I can start with that configuration configure multiple project startup and let me start for the project. Yes. Okay. So my both projects started at the same time. Now let me go to that. To access the account service, this is the URL. Then I can go to the Postman and and after that it should be account service API. So here you can see I'm getting the response. In the similar way, like if I need to hit that payment service, I can go to the launch setting and I can put this URL and it will be the post and API and what will be the payment service. And here in the body, I need to pass that JSON data. So the JSON data will be the full name, another email, xyz.com, the third phone number, and then payment number. And let's say 30. And if I hit that, I'm getting payment added successfully. Now here we are hitting these account service at different URL, this one, and then the payment service at different. Now let me add that payment gateway, API gateway. Okay, let me here. Okay, now I need to add one more solution. In the real-time scenario, those are going to be API gateway. Let me call it API gateway. In the same way, like I can remove the weather forecast, delete, and the controller I can delete it. Now what I need to do, I need to add the package, and the package is YARP. YARP reverse proxy, yet another reverse proxy. So let me install it. After installing the package, I just need to go to that in that app setting, and here you can see that after installing the package, it starts showing me the reverse proxy. So it has two things. Reverse proxy has two things. One is the cluster, and another part is routes. I will explain both in more detail. So the cluster, okay, let me add the cluster. The first cluster I would like to, let's say, account cluster. Okay, in that account cluster, I can go to that. Okay, my destination. Okay, sorry, I'm the first thing I need to implement the route. So that is going to be that first one to implement. So let me go to the route, and then we will add the cluster. Then in the route I can cluster. Why it's not something? Okay, sorry. Something I've been missing. Okay, so let me add account route. So here I can add cluster ID, which is cluster ID, and like account. I can name it any, and then match. What should it match? Like then I will add API, and I know that how to match my account. API.account service. This is where I know that. Okay. And next thing is like I would like 2-star, and I say match all. And I will say catch all. And match, and it should be that it should start with API, and I say catch. So here that account route, and then cluster, I can name it anything. Like so I said it account cluster, and match I said it the path, like API account service, and double star catch all. So any path after this it will catch. After adding that account route, similarly I can payment route, and there I can say cluster ID, and let's say payment cluster, and then next thing is match, and in the match I can match the path. So where is my payment service? I can go there and see that how I have implemented what is the route of the payment service, and then I can put that double star and catch all. After done with that route, next thing is I need to implement clusters. Okay, now and the cluster name should be exactly this one. So here I defined the routing, but now I need to define if this is the routing, which IP, what will be the URL that API gateway is going to send that request. Okay, now I can name it, and it should be same that account cluster. It should be the cluster, and then I can say that destination, and here I can put that serve in the destination. So here destination I can say that account service, and the next I can give you the address. What should be the address? And here I can go to that account launch setting, and this is the address I know that the account service has been hosted on. Once I'm done with that account cluster, then I need to implement the payment cluster. Okay, let me go back to that and payment cluster. So here destinations, and here payment service, and same way I need to give the address. And what will be the payment service address? I can go and check here. Okay, so using this one, you are able to see I have mapped all that. If the path is going to be like this, then the account cluster need to handle that request, and account cluster has the further, okay, this is the address which is going to handle that request. So that's fine. In the same way, like if this is the path and this is the path for payment service, then payment cluster is going to handle, and for the payment cluster I mentioned the destination address is this one. Now I go back to their properties and multiple project, and let me start this one as well. API Gateway, apply. Let me open the Postman. Now, earlier you were able to see that client request we were sending to this destination, and for the payment request we were sending to this destination. But after implementing gateway, let me go and, okay, sorry, my bad. I need to update that program file. Okay, I can delete this and I can delete that, and using YARP, using YARP.reverse proxy. Now builder dot services dot add reverse proxy, add reverse proxy, and load from config. So I said it add reverse proxy and load from config, and where is the config we have defined, which is coming from builder dot configuration dot get section, and what was the name of the section we just added. Here we can go there in the app setting, and we can see, okay, this is the section. Okay, perfectly. So what I did it builder.service.add reverse proxy. Now next thing is what I need to do, app.map reverse proxy. Okay, these are the two things. Okay, now let me build the project. After building it, like you were able to see that we were sending the payment request and that account service to the different IP. Now let me make a note of, let me go back to it, and now we will be sending that both the request to payment gateway API. Now let me go there and account service. See, I'm getting the response in the similar way. Let me go back and let me body, and let me copy that API button. Payment service. And payment added successfully. So here you can see that this time for both the service, whether being an account service or the payment service, we are hitting payment API gateway. So that was it. Thank you for your time.